The first shipment of vaccine is in Singapore, and the arrival has been a long time coming. Even before COVID-19 cases spiked in late April, the search for suitable vaccine candidates had begun. In April, the Economic Development Board had formed an expert panel of scientists and clinicians to source promising vaccine candidates. They first looked at about 100 before whittling it down to more than 35, poring over data to identify which was safe to procure. Later, that same month, a multi-agency planning group was formed to secure early access to vaccines. Then in May, it shortlisted a portfolio of candidates, relying on assessments made by the expert panel. In June, Singapore made a down payment for its first advance purchase agreement with Moderna. In August, it bought the Sinovac vaccine and held advanced talks with Pfizer-BioNTech. After reviewing data, the Health Sciences Authority approved the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine this month. Efforts to shortlist and procure other candidates continue as Singapore looks to diversify its vaccine portfolio. Deborah Wong has met the teams to get a better understanding of the ins and outs of the process.
New COVID-19 strains, allergic reactions to vaccines and delayed clinical trials. It's clear that the evolving, complex nature of the pandemic requires an all-hands-on-deck approach. So authorities say Singapore needs to make multiple bets. And this approach has been underpinned by careful and early planning. Now, EDB began by making contact with a wide range of vaccine makers. It's a process that isn't always straightforward.
When we were at the point of negotiating a product, we had no idea if it was actually going to be licensed, right? And so this had to be accompanied with a risk-adjusted approach. For example, how much do we buy? And at what point, what data will allow us to make certain decisions? We had to consider the changing supply issues around the world and how that could potentially impact some of these discussions, made this set of conversations much more complicated.
To date, Singapore has signed about 40 non-disclosure agreements with pharma firms. This allows authorities access to confidential data, which they use to make informed decisions on strategic bets. When it's time to buy, the Health Ministry negotiates and finalizes commercial agreements.
We need to spread the bets a little bit to sort of say that, okay, we can't put all our eggs in one basket. We need to have a combination of advance purchase agreements and other things. So to make sure that hopefully if one or more of them fail, at the end of the day, we have something.
An advance purchase agreement, you're trying to buy something before the product's actually available. Almost like buying a movie ticket even before the reviews come. But subsequently, we had to look at how soon can we actually get it to Singapore. If we want to buy, is it available? Because it could actually be bought up by bigger jurisdictions. The US, EU, many of the large economies have bought huge chunks.
Buying early, though, doesn't mean shortcuts were taken.
We evaluated all vaccine technologies, but we eventually looked at RNA with a lot more interest, particularly because they were easier to manufacture and therefore went into clinical trials earlier and can actually be made available globally in the large quantities needed.
But looking at the standards of clinical trials, we are very confident, and I think globally, many agencies and many countries are confident that the process was abided to. It was not at the risk of compromising the integrity of the study. So if you needed 30,000, you needed 30,000 subjects to be recruited, right? So there were no shortcuts from that point of view.
As the vaccines are used in populations worldwide, regulators like Singapore's Health Sciences Authority will need to log all side effects in a registry. Singapore hasn't disclosed how many doses it's ordered from Pfizer-BioNTech, and this confidentiality extends to agreements made with other pharma firms. It's the first time, though, that the government has bought large quantities of a drug before approval. More than $1 billion has been set aside for Singapore's vaccine efforts, which includes the actual cost of the drugs.
Singapore is really known as a leading biomedical hub. So I think the region does look to Singapore for certain thought leadership, whether it's in regulatory and clinical sciences. So I think that position, plus the fact that many companies actually have significant base in Singapore, puts us in a good footing to be able to negotiate and work with them on vaccines access despite our small market size.
Moving ahead, EDB is working with companies to set up more vaccine production plants here.